excites me, and the reason why I have bees is that it got me interested in science and biology. And I'm a nurse. I've been to physical therapy school, but I'm a nurse now. And so, but it was that whole science thing. I had a great, my grandfather was a great tutor. I mean, he didn't have formal education, but as far as biology came, he really had it down to animal science with his cows, horses, and honeybees. And that kind of piqued my curiosity that maybe I should go into science. And after I quit teaching high school, I said, yeah, this is the way to go. So, you know, science is everywhere, and you can all be biologists on a small scale. And if you want to go big, go big. But it's pretty cool because it's around us everywhere. And so that's why bees are my hobby, although I used to have 50 beehives at one point. It's a lot of hard work, and I don't mind getting stung, but it's something I don't look forward to every day. So nursing is much better. That way only people throw stuff at me on occasion. But I'm assuming that most of you've had biology here, right? Basic biology and some physics and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. Because if you look at the honeybee, you know, purely on physics, the honeybee shouldn't be able to fly because of its anatomical design, and it shouldn't be able to carry more than its weight in nectar and pollen. Okay, and how in the heck does a honeybee even find its way home? Does anybody have an idea how a honeybee goes out the hive yet?
It has sensors in their head or something?
Yeah. So what that bee does, it actually uses geometry. If you look at geometry, the bee comes out of the hive and it looks at the inclination of the sun in the sky, and then it looks at the physical surroundings, and then it also navigates by the smell of its own hive. Every hive has a unique smell. Even fingerprints, they think more than one person can have a very similar fingerprint. But each hive has its own unique smell. So that honeybee will fly out, you know, and it will find nectar or pollen, and it will triangulate that, you know. How many points make a straight line? 3, right? Isn't that from geometry, algebra, something like that? 2 points make a straight line? Okay. So it triangulates, and that's how it finds its way back. And then it goes back to the hive, and there was a German guy called von Fritz, I think, and what the bee does, it does a bee dance, and every time it wiggles its abdomen, that lets the bee know, the other bees know where the source is of nectar or pollen or where a new home is. So some of this stuff is this slideshow is really aimed for people younger than yourself, so I apologize for that. But does anybody have any questions about honeybees in particular? Yes.
Is it true that if bees are kind of like, it's like they have like an emergency beacon, because if you kill one, it sends off a chemical homing device and the rest will come and kill you?
Yes, they'll attack you. What that's called, and when you're around honeybees enough, but everybody has it. You know, like before a big exam, or if you're scared, you really smell your sweat. I mean, it's a different sweat smell than if you're an athlete running. I mean, it's a definite, you'll notice that when you're nervous, you're sweating, or if you have to get up and talk, you're really sweating, right? That's different than what a normal sweat is. Well, when you kill a bee, or when I go into that hive unexpectedly, I pop that top open, I can smell that. And all the bees' abdomens come up like this. It's like a phalanx, and you can see their stingers with venom dripping off of it. So if I was to put my hand down there, I would get tagged. So it's a formic acid, and how the bees defend themselves against bears, skunks, and other things that would bother it is that when they sting you, like I got stung here yesterday right on the side of my neck, other bees tried to tag me that same spot because they left a beacon right here. I mean, I got the stinger out, but there was still a scent there. Unless I used soap and water, it was still there. And other bees tried to sting me there, so they concentrate that. And as far as smell goes, you know, bees have all of our senses, plus they see ultraviolet. But if you walk, you know, talking about smell, if you walk into somebody else's house, you know, there's a different odor to it. Well, that's like their fingerprint of that house. Outside, if they were cooking with garlic and making bok choy or something, you know. But you know that everybody has their own unique smell, and that's how bees know each other. So let's say I have 10 beehives here in a row, right? And I have my hives painted different colors. How does a bee know which one to go in? I mean, some of my hives have 60, 70, 80,000 bees in them. How do they know to go back to box A? Because if they go to box B, they'll get killed. Well, they know from triangulating, but when they come in, there are bees on this doorstep that are blowing air out, and in that air is a scent of here I am. It's like a radar beacon when you land at the Oakland airport, if it's foggy. There's a beacon that says, here's the runway, land here. Well, it's the same thing. Insects have got it down to a science. So I got carried away with that question. Yes?
And when a bee stings you, when they lose their stingers, they can die.
They do die. They do die. And the bee doesn't think I'm, geez, I'm going to die. That's just how they're genetically programmed. It's not even a question they're going to sting you. And the reason why they die is that they have a barbed stinger, whereas the yellow jacket that comes by to drink from your Coca-Cola and eat your steak with you at your picnic, set them off a little bit to the side. They'll like it better. But the yellow jacket and the wasp, the honeybee is the only one that has a barbed stinger. The queen bee, though, on the other hand, which is pretty cool, doesn't have a barbed stinger, because if there's more than one queen in the hive, when they hatch out, they will fight each other and they'll sting each other, and the one who lives is the superior of the species, because that one survived, and it will propagate that species and that genetic line. And that's why they have barbed stinger. I've never been stung by a queen, and I picked them up and marked them. You'll see some of the queens I have are marked. A couple other cool things about the bee hairs. You see these little hairs here? These are all electrical charged. So that when that bee, and you're thinking, geez, how can a bee have electrical charge? Is it a positive charge or is it a negative? I forget, I don't know. But it's charged, so when that goes into that plant, the pollen will stick on there, then the bee can she can groom itself. These are all females. Drones only make up about 5 to 10% of the population. So that pollen will stick to it, and then you can carry it back to the hive. Okay, yes?
Is it also that it just stings there, and when you did something like that?
I get stung all the time. I'm bad all the time, no. The bees sting you much like a dog that protects your house would bark at you and protect the house. There are guard bees, and the guard bees tend to be the older bees in ornery, because they go through a very regimented life. They come out from the cell, they become cleaner bees, they become nurse bees, then they become foragers, then they become guard bees. And a worker bee like this in the summertime lives only about 5 to 6 weeks, and then they die. They literally work themselves to death, or they get eaten by blue jays or other birds, or I squash them inadvertently. Yes?
What's their lifespan, like the oldest they can be?
Well, they've had queens, 5, 6 years, but a worker bee lives the longest if it's born like in September, because the bees in August, September, October, those bees live over winter. So there has to be bees to carry the hive through winter. And of course they're not outside the hive because it's under 50 or 55. Okay. Yes, in the back there. I know you two have to have some questions. I'm putting you on the spot.
What kind of bees are there?
Great question. So what kind of honeybees are there? Well, just in Berkeley, the Berkeley, Oakland, this area here, there's over 80 species of native bees. Okay, over 80 species. I'm sure we're doing a great job killing those off. But honeybees, the big honeybees in America here, this is an Italian, mainly from Italy. They call that the European honeybee. There's a variation of that. You'll see some really dark bees with a dark abdomen. Those are carnelians. Those are from the Caucasus Mountains, which is nowadays Georgia, Chechnya, by the Black Sea over in Ukraine. That's a dark bee, but there's bees on every continent. Every continent. There's bees in Siberia. Okay, there's bees in Vietnam, Australia, New Zealand, everywhere in the world except for the Antarctic and the Arctic. Question?
Is it true that if all the bees go extinct, more than 40% of the food would go away?
I think about a third of the fruit in California. I'll use this beautiful red delicious apple. You see, let's say if we cut this into 4, right? And each quadrant has 2 seeds for a total of 8, right? So if this apple was perfectly pollinated, okay? It doesn't necessarily have to have been pollinated by a bee, but it could have been pollinated by a ladybug or some other a fly or something else. But if this wasn't perfectly pollinated, let's say this, well, for sure this apple would not be symmetrical like it is, but it would also be missing seeds. So let's say it didn't get pollinated right, we're down to only 4 seeds, right? Let's say we finish wiping off the bees in California, they don't truck any more in. Well, this apple is probably from Washington State. Let's say there's no more seeds, so how are we going to propagate, how's this fruit going to keep going? It's not. It's absolutely not going to happen. So that's really the big issue with bees. I mean, you realize that we are flying in bees from Australia via airplane to pollinate the almonds here, okay? That's crazy. All the way from Australia. That's an 18-hour plane ride because I've been there. Maybe it was more. But that's the question about pollination and pollinators. Yes?
How much have the bee population changed in the past couple of years?
Changed as far as numbers? Oh, I would say that, I can't give you an exact number, but I know that the bee population losses, like I'm down to about 1 hive, and I had, a year ago, I probably had 8 to 10. So they died over the winter due to disease. So, you know, it's significant because then they have to get built back up, you know, through swarms. Yeah. So every year it takes hits. You know, another crazy thing about the bees, and I'll talk to you about disease, is that beekeepers were using, they probably still do, tetracycline. They use human antibiotics, much like they do in poultry farms, swine farms, and with cattle, to treat diseases of bees. But of course that, you know, everything gets into the honey, then we eat it, and it makes us more susceptible to bacteria and viruses. I'm going to start this, and if you have any questions, speak up. Some of these in here are my pictures of my daughters. You know, the bee smells through its antenna. It breathes through the back on its abdomen, through the spiracles. This is a young female worker bee. She has a lot of fuzz on the back of her head. That's how you can tell she's young. She has 2 sets of wings. That's just a great looking beetle, isn't it? This is a really cool, I looked on the internet a bunch of this. I was up outside of Reading, outside of Red Bluff, 40 miles west of Red Bluff on Highway 36, walking around collecting insects. And I went to a wood pile and I found this, and I'd never seen this. Anybody know what it is? Well, I asked and asked. I had to talk to the agricultural commissioner in Duke County up by Chico, and she told me that that was a woolly ant. It's pretty cool. I mean, it's you think, well, why is that ant that color? Well, it's all about camouflage. It doesn't bite or anything like that. Well, that's my daughter. You notice she stole her hat. That's just a cool butterfly, sorry. This is a ladybug swarm. The ladybugs swarm into the Oakland Hills. They come down out of the Feather River Canyon. They catch the air currents and then drop down, and that's how they move around. They don't fly from here to Oroville or anywhere up in the Sierras. They catch air currents and then drop down. I've seen them so thick up in the park that when I was running through that, I wish I had had goggles on and a face mask. And you can go through there and scoop them up with your hands. Well, that's just your classic bee suits. They don't get tagged. So each of my hives each year produces a frame like this. This has honey on it. This is what they call a half super frame. And this holds about right around 6.6 pounds of honey.
Wow.
And when I extract 10 of these, you know, I get usually around 30, 35 pounds of honey from it. I'll pass this by later. Oh, did you stop that? Okay. Yeah. So this here is these next couple of pictures are a swarm. I don't have the sound to it, I don't think. But it's pretty cool. It came to my backyard and I started taking pictures. This is a swarm I got out of the Oakland Hills. Just some more. So I don't always have gear on when I'm working with the bees.
That's how you get stung.
Well, you know, you have to know when. It's just like, how do you know if a dog's going to bite you? You really don't know, but you go slow. And the thing about working with bees is you always have to go slow. Don't try that, holding bees in front of your face. You just have to look at their flight pattern and see what they're doing. If bees are getting a lot of honey, like right now, they tend to be very gentle. This is honeycomb. I didn't put enough frames into the hive, so the bees just built their wax for me right off the top of the lid. There's 3 types of bees in the hive. It's primarily worker bees. Those are the female bees that have stingers. I'll get you into that. Drones don't have stingers. They cannot protect themselves.